we have two great personalities here, out of which Mr. Charles Corriea ji is getting Gomant Vibhushan award. And normally there is a saying that behind every successful man there is a woman. But this is not the case here. Both are equally successful. Both are equally competent. And whatever interaction I had with them in last 1 week, I have seen that both are equally independent and really made for each other. Such a fantastic couple, one of the fantastic couple I have come across in my life. Now while taking this interview, I am told by the officials that I am supposed to ask them, and especially Mr. Charles Corriea, everything but architecture. Nothing about architecture, because since morning you must have heard a lot about architecture. And जीवन बिवन जातकर अजीर्ण नाका architectureचे. So ताका लागून I won't ask anything, but still a journalist within me is tempting me to ask only one question. There is a lot of empty space which you keep, lot of empty space, but it is just not empty. You frame that emptiness with certain frames, and maybe like a theater, in theater how we do it, and that frame gives certain depth. And while reading your brochure also, you have written that you are quite impressed with the concept of shunya. What is the philosophy behind this emptiness and the depth through the frames?
Well, I think the reason why you have the frame is in order to see the emptiness. If you just had emptiness, it would be nothing. I think, I don't think one designs in a mechanical way. There are certain compulsions which move the pencil, which move your mind. And for some reason, I found myself becoming more and more interested in the fact that emptiness has an energy which, like I said, the house around a courtyard, the empty thing you're talking about, it allows the light to come down. And and one of the most basic things in every culture, in every religion, has been a connection between the earth and God's sky above. It's called the axis of the universe, the axis mundi of the world. Now, that exists regardless in all of us. So when we see somewhere light coming down or someone going up, being ascended, it's in every religion. It becomes interesting. So in that sense, it becomes compulsive. So in that sense, I think when you design, you are not actually analyzing and saying, I'll do this because of that. You do it, and afterwards you realize that's the effect. So I don't know how I stumbled on this, but it always seemed to me, and then later on when I read about shunya and how it generated mathematics, but the shunya existed in Hinduism and perhaps in Buddhism too, obviously, as an entity in itself. It was zero, nothing is a state. Now the Romans, the Greeks, they didn't realize that. So from 3, they went to 2, to 1, and they went to -1. They didn't know there was such a thing as nothing. And that's why they couldn't multiply or divide. All they could do was, but the shunya came out of a philosophy, out of a metaphysics. It's a very, very deep thing. I won't stray into architecture, but if you see the houses, we were discussing this morning, I wasn't, but they were discussing here, the houses in Goa. The Portuguese houses are a big shed roof, and they have their own charm and the balcão and stuff. But there's another kind of house which predates the Portuguese, and you see it in Mamai Kamat's house, you see it in the houses here in Margao and all. The old Hindu houses, the center of it is empty. It is a little tulsi plant.
We call it Rajangan.
You must be having in your house. Now, the wonder of that is as soon as you have an empty center, you don't get the dark rooms that you get in the old Portuguese houses or the old British bungalows in Bangalore. The light coming in there, of course, brings light back into the rooms. And what I love about it is that it's there for a metaphysical reason. It's not just practical. So you realize that a lot of the things which happen in life are people listening to this inner voice, which is really what you do, I suppose, if you're a painter or a singer or an architect, is you try to listen to that voice without dictating to it, now you should design like this. That's an important element. I'm sure, yeah.
Okay. So just because you said about emptiness, I remember that after I think your father died when you were just maybe a week before you were born.
Yes.
And then after that, after a little while, then you were shifted to your grandfather's place.
Yeah, my mother was the eldest.
Which was not, there was no emptiness at all.
No emptiness. There were
a lot of fullness.
Yeah, my mother was the eldest sister, eldest daughter of a family of 8 girls and 3 boys, 11 children. So, of course, most of them had married by the time we got there to Bombay. But it was a big change from a quiet house in Secunderabad where I lived for the first 5 years. My father died in Secunderabad. I had 3 elder brothers and sisters, so it must have been tough for my mother for those few years. And my grandfather asked her to come back to Bombay. Now I moved into a house which was full of people, cousins and uncles and aunts, and it was a wonderful time for me because many of the things which later on in life I am interested in came from that. You know, movies, for instance, or trains, or aeroplanes, and reading and music. There was always some cousin or somebody or sister or an aunt who had this passion for this thing. And so a child picks this up. So I'm really very much in favor in that sense of joint families because they really allow a child to grow in a way. In fact, those are my grandparents. That's Dr. Heredia and Mrs. Heredia, Angela. And they were very, staid, conventional people, but lively. That's my father and our family in Secunderabad. But anyway, we don't have to stop for that. Doesn't make any difference. So I think that made a lot of difference to me, I think. I don't know what, if I'd grown up in Secunderabad, I don't know what I would have done.
One thing I just read somewhere...
Probably become a dentist or something. What do you think? Something really...
No, but I just read this thing, and that you are quite fond of toy trains in your childhood, which led you to architecture, something like that?
Well, yeah, I don't know if it made me into an, but I think there was a connection because trains, when I talk about toy trains, I'm talking about the trains that you join the rails together and you can make them go around and out something. And I'm not talking about model railways, which are nailed down and perfectly to scale, and the child can only turn a knob and make them go like a electric razor around. No, I'm talking about a train which the child themselves can decide whether it goes under the bed, and every time it does that, it goes under the bed. You can imagine it's a tunnel, etc. So I think your imagination is stimulated, and also in terms of what you call topology of patterns. So, and the combination, and later on in life I saw that so many of the things in architecture, like the Pradakshina, is actually a sacred ritualistic pathway around the temple, and you have that even in Mecca. So there is something in these things which I feel must have affected my brain in some way. Anyway, better for worse.
So I believe now you're almost 82-year-old. I don't know when is your next birthday coming up, but if I give you a toy train...
I'm just 81 in September.
81-year-old. Sorry.
I'm on my way to 82.
Yeah.
Right?
So if I give you a toy train as a birthday gift, would you like it?
Very much. You got one?
Yeah.
Okay. I like one very much.
Definitely. I believe today, after Gomant Vibhushan award is given to you, they also give you one small toy train which you'll remember.
That would be really nice.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know, you were living in such a big family in Bombay, and it was not a small family, just not in terms of number, But one of your sort of a mentor, like you can say, was Jimmy Heredia, and your uncle and his wife Irene. And Jimmy Heredia was the sheriff of Bombay.
He was,
what kind of impact you had of this person? What kind of personality which made Mr. Charles Corriea?
No, I mean, his being sheriff was a small thing. I mean, he didn't carry a gun or anything like that. But he's a very fine person, and his wife Irene is still alive. She's 94 and she lives near us in Vere. And no, they had a big effect on me. He was my godfather, Padrin. And he had another brother, Freddie, who was very fond of trains and also of jazz music and stuff. And then, I don't know, different people have different influences on you. And I think I had an aunt who really loved the movies of that time, which was the 1940, 40, all during World War II. I was born in 1930. So even now when those movies show, I like to see them because I only heard their names. And I think that happens to most children. I think they're very impressionistic, whatever the word is, by the things which happen around them. So when these things are diverse, I think the child has a chance to choose something they really like. Yeah.
Ma'am, what was your experience with his uncle and auntie Jimmy and Irene Heredia? Because I read a lot about them.
Well, I come from a fairly large family too, 4 brothers and 4 sisters. But when I got married to Charles, it was rather an overwhelming sort of array of aunts and uncles and cousins, and by that time there were all sorts of, in-laws. But it was a wonderfully warm and friendly family. And they welcomed me, I don't know for what reason, but anyway, they welcomed me into the family, and I've always stayed very good friends with everyone, with the earlier generation at least. Jimmy and Irene in particular were very nice, but there were others also. Well, my mother-in-law to start out with was a wonderful mother-in-law, and very warm, and we had a wonderful relationship.
What about your own children? Where are they now? Because how many architects?
No, our daughter Nandita Chinu is an architect. She's married to an architect, Rahul Mehrotra. Right now, Rahul is chairman at Harvard at School of Planning, and so they are there, urban design, and with their 2 children. And our son is in Palo Alto, so and he's got 3 children, so they're 5 grandchildren. But yes, it's a shame neither of them are here with us, and that's one reason. And I know many Goans also have their children abroad, and I wish Goa was. That's why in the plan we tried to say we should preserve its fragile beauty, but we should make it a place also where people don't have to leave.
You had also gone abroad, but you came back.
Yeah.
What was your feeling there?
Not because I'm so patriotic, but it's because I think wherever you live, you have advantages, disadvantages. I prefer the disadvantages of India to those in America. I think, secondly, I think as an architect, you don't need much of a support system. If you're an atomic scientist, unless you've got a huge support system of laboratories and other people, you cannot, like, say, Homi Bhabha, to get people back, the scientists he brought back, he had to promise them a lot. He had to create TIFR. Right. The wonderful thing about being an architect, I think, is that you don't really need much support system. At least you think you don't. I mean, you really have to get a chance to build, and if all they have is mud, or all they have is bricks, or all they have is glass, you have to try and find a way which works with the climate and stuff.
But what do you think the things, because I had heard once Dr. Raghunath Mashilkar saying that he was trying to get many scientists back to India, and he was saying that only one thing he did is that he bought and kept a lot of gas cylinders, because that was the thing you were not getting, and when they came back, they started with a stove initially. Okay. So,
perhaps.
But don't you think that that scenario is changing now?
Yes, I think people are coming back, and the thing is, as soon as you cross a certain critical mass, I mean, supposing it's writers, if there are enough other writers around, then they feel very happy. In a sense, because someone is reading what they write.